Welcome, everyone. This is an ASEP class of really 3 different ASEP classes: sewing, cooking, and Spanish cooking. Because you can't sew online. You can cook though, and Sandra has given me permission to take over cooking. So I am going to be doing this for the next 7 weeks. Today we're going to cook M&M Sugar Cookies, which is one of my favorite kinds of cookies ever. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to wash our hands. That is, if any of you have taken my summer cooking class, you know that is my #1 rule of cooking, is washing your hands. Now, certainly because of what's happening in the world right now, everybody has been washing their hands a lot lately. I'm going to bring the camera with me to the sink, and I'm going to show you how I wash my hands. The way that I wash my hands takes between 20 and 30 seconds without even having to count. And it is how I learned to wash my hands when I was in teacher training and I was learning about what they do in primary. So this is how they're taught to wash their hands in primary, because it is a very, very thorough way to get your hands clean. So follow me. I'm gonna bring the computer over to the sink. Also, just so you know, this is a working kitchen. That means that other people use it. This is the house where I live, and I live with 3 other people. And they all have stuff to do too. So if you see them in the background, don't worry about it. They're great. All right, so first thing you're gonna do, turn on your water, get your hands wet, turn the water off. You do not need water anymore at this point. Get the soap on your hand, rub it in, kind of rub it all around. And then I start with my left thumb, make a little hole with my other hand, and I just wash each finger. And then I do the other side, like so. I wash the backs of my hands. I wash in between, including in between the thumbs, around the wrist. I take my fingers and I make like a pinch, and I swirl them around in my palm. That helps to clean your nails. Now you can turn that water back on. Really rinse off well, because you definitely don't want your cookies tasting like soap. And then dry them off with a clean towel or paper towel. So, we've already completed step 1. It's amazing. So the next thing that I want to tell you guys about is actually a phrase that is used in cooking. It is in French, so I'm going to write it for you. I'm wondering if this is going to show up backwards. I hope it doesn't. But what I want to show you is this phrase. It's mise en place. Mise en place. And it means putting in place. So, mise en place means putting in place. And what that refers to is you want to have all of your ingredients and all of your materials, everything that you're going to need to start cooking, all worked out ahead of time. If you've ever watched a cooking class or a cooking show on the Food Network or wherever, sometimes you'll see chefs with like little cups like this, and they just have, however much salt, and they just dump the salt in, and they have it all set up and all of their measurements done ahead of time. That is a very detailed mise en place, which we could do, but I also want to show you guys how I measure things, because that's also important to cooking. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to show you everything I have for this recipe. Now, I don't know if you could hear that in the background just now, but my oven beeped, and it was telling me that it was preheated. I already turned on my oven. It's going to need to be 350 degrees. It's a pretty quick cook time. But I like to start my oven right away. Some ovens heat up like that, some take forever. So that is ready to go for me. If you guys want to take a moment and pause the video and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And if you need your parents' help with that, they can help you. Sometimes it's a dial. Usually it's buttons, it's digital, but you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so here is my mise en place. I have my foil covered cookie tray, or my like sheet pan. This is what I'm going to do the cooking on. I cover it in foil because it makes fewer dishes, because all I have to do is take the foil off and throw it away, and then it's clean. Because another thing we're going to talk about is cleaning up after yourself while you're cooking. So I have a medium bowl, mixing bowl, a large mixing bowl. I have measuring spoons. I have measuring cups. I have a spatula. And I have, there it is, I have a whisk. I'm going to be using all of these things while I'm cooking. Okay, so those are sort of my materials that I have. Here are the ingredients that we need. M&Ms. It has been very hard for me to not eat all of these before I've done the video. Baking powder. Baking powder, which is different than baking soda. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. I also have 1 stick of butter that I took out of the refrigerator and I let it just sit until it got soft. You don't want it melted. You don't want to melt it in the microwave, because your cookies, when they get into the oven, they're going to spread out too much. You're going to have these flat, not as fluffy cookies. So this is softened butter, and it's very important, it is unsalted. Please, whenever you cook, use unsalted butter, because most of the time a recipe will have salt included already. And if you have salted butter, you're going to end up with a very salty result. And sometimes it's really salty, and sometimes it's not salty at all, and you can get away with it. But better safe than sorry. We also have granulated sugar. Granulated sugar is the white sugar that you put in tea and coffee. So when you hear me talk about granulated sugar or white sugar, that's what I'm talking about. We're also going to need light brown sugar. This is sugar that has molasses in it, so it makes it extra sticky and very delicious. We need vanilla extract, some salt, and now the last ingredient is flour. Now, you at home are using regular all-purpose flour, and that is fine. I am using a different kind of flour. My flour is gluten-free because gluten makes me sick. So I'm gonna try making my cookies with gluten-free flour. You can make yours with regular flour. Or if you are also trying to eat gluten-free, you can get some gluten-free flour too. So part of cooking is experimenting and seeing how it goes, and then, you know, maybe trying it a little bit different next time, or adding something or taking something away, or doing something completely different. Cooking can be a lot of fun that way. So now it is time to get started. We are going to start with, what are we going to start with? I think this smaller bowl. Okay. Also, just to warn you, I have injured my wrist somehow, so stirring is kind of hard for me, so this might go a little bit slow. But the first thing we're going to do, and what you usually do when you're making a baked good, is you're going to combine your dry ingredients first. So that means we're going to start off with flour. And if you have your recipe in front of you that I emailed, you really just go down through the recipe and do things in that order. It's already showing you what to do. So my recipe is calling for 1 cup of flour. And I'm going to get a knife real quick. Because this is what I'm going to use to level my flour. Now, I have a 1/4 cup I need half a cup, so that means I need 2 of these. So the best way to get the amount that you need is always by weight, using a scale. But this recipe doesn't give us that those weights that we need. So what you're gonna do when you scoop, you're gonna do it really gently. You could even take a spoon and spoon it in. Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want it to get packed in there, because then you're gonna end up with more than you need. So I'm gonna take my butter knife and I'm gonna use this flat side. And I'm gonna push all that flour off and put it in my bowl. And remember, I needed half a cup, and all I have is this 1/4 measuring cup, so I'm gonna do 2 of those. For those of you who are learning fractions, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So that's why I'm able to use this 1/4 measuring cup for these purposes. Okay. I can put my flour to the side. I'm done with that. Next, what I need is baking powder. Okay, so remember how I told you we were going to talk a little bit about baking powder and baking soda? The reason why is because baking soda is inside of baking powder along with cornstarch. These are things that we're going to use when we make quick breads. That means breads that don't need yeast to rise. So you never want to confuse your baking powder measurement with your baking soda measurement. Also, you never want to say, oh, I don't have any baking powder, that's okay, I'll just use more baking soda, or vice versa. Your food will taste very bad, and I know this because I have done it. So, according to my recipe, I have my recipe written down here. You probably have a printer at your house, so you might have that printed out next to you. So it's calling for 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So again, a gentle scoop. I'm not like digging in there, because that's not going to give me what I want. So again, I'm going to level this. I'm actually going to move the camera down so that you guys can just see what I'm doing and just hear my voice. Okay. Done with the baking powder. Now I need baking soda. And all we have is this gigantic box of baking soda, which is okay. I'm just going to open it up. Maybe. There we go. And again, we did some cooking yesterday, and so a lot of stuff is in the dishwasher. I only have a 1/4 teaspoon. But I need half a teaspoon. So just like I did with the cup, I'm just going to use 2. 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1/2. So I'm going to get in there. You know what I am going to do? When I was talking about mise en place before with lots of ingredients in tiny bowls, we're going to put this baking soda into a bowl because it'll be much, much easier to measure. And then I can put this back later. One of the things with cooking that's important to remember is don't make it harder for yourself. If you have a bag of flour and you're having to reach your hand way into the bag to get your flour out, get a pair of scissors and cut the top off. You want to make it as simple as you can, because cooking can be stressful, or maybe you're in a hurry, or maybe you just don't want to bother with all of that extra work. So I have 1/4 and one more 1/4, and that gives me a total of 1/2 of baking soda. And then I need a 1/4 teaspoon, which is perfect, I have it right here, of salt. So one of the things that I tell kids to do when they're in my cooking class in the summer, whenever you have to measure something in a small measuring spoon, do it over something so that if you spill, it just spills into that extra cup. It doesn't spill into the recipe that you're already making. So I'm going to take my salt and see how a bunch of it overflowed, but it's no big deal because it overflowed into the cup and that's fine. And put it in there. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to whisk these ingredients together. I have a giant whisk. You don't need a giant whisk. You can have a small whisk. And you're just going to combine everything together as best you can. Have you ever gotten a taste of a cookie, like a bite of a cookie, and it's really, really salty? That might have been because the dry ingredients weren't mixed together as well as they should have been. All right, I'm now going to set this aside because we don't need it yet, but we will need it in just a minute, so it's not going far away. Okay, next. Now this is where it might get tricky because of my wrist. Normally, I would use a KitchenAid for this, which is one of those big standing mixers. Sometimes people have hand mixers that they can use. I'm going to do it by hand because I don't know what you have at home. So I'm going to assume all you have to work with are your hands. And that's fine. You can definitely cook with just your hands. Cooking existed long before standing mixers and hand mixers were invented. So first what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my butter. It's very soft. Just plop it into the bowl. Then, I know before we said that we were mixing all of our dry ingredients. Sugar, however, is different. When you're baking, sugar gets creamed with butter. So we are going to combine both sugars. So I have my white granulated sugar here in this container. And according to my recipe, I need a half a cup. So again, I'm missing half a cup, so I'm going to use my quarter cup twice. Just not scooping super hard, always leveling. Always leveling. So there's one. And here is two, so that's a half cup of granulated white sugar. And we also need a third cup, which I do have, of brown sugar. Now, brown sugar is different than all other dry ingredients because what I've told you is that you don't want to pack anything in because you're going to end up with too much. Brown sugar is the exception to that rule. You are going to pack the sugar down into the cup. So I'm going to get in here. And because this is sugar mixed with molasses, it gets really sticky. So sometimes you got to get in there a couple of times. Sometimes you say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to make this any harder for myself, just like Miss Mistretta said. I'm just going to go and get a spoon. If I have a spoon, I don't even have a spoon. I'm going to use this tablespoon. Kind of dig in there with that. Fill up your cup that way. Okay. And what's going to happen is you're going to have more sugar in there than it looks like you should. See how there's a hill? But what we're going to do is we're going to take our clean hand and we're going to push it down. Pack it down. Pack, 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 pack. Now, I can tell I still have just a little bit of space. So I'm going to take my spoon. I'm going to add a little bit more, and I'm going to pack, 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 pack that down. Okay. So now you're sugary, and you've got what looks like a puck of brown sugar. At this point, if you'd like, it's a good time to rinse off your hands. You don't have to do a full wash. You can just rinse off that brown sugar you just got on your hands, or just kind of, give it one of those and you'll be fine. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna cream these together. That means I'm probably gonna use a combination of my whisk and my spatula. I'm gonna start off with my spatula, I think, because otherwise all of the ingredients get stuck inside of the wires. So since my butter is nice and soft, all I have to do is kind of smush it down with this spatula. You can stir it if you want, smush it some more. Now, like I said, my wrist is not feeling great, so normally I would go a lot faster than this, but this is actually working out really well, and I don't think I'm even gonna need to use the whisk. We just wanna make sure that all of the butter is combined with all of the sugar. So you don't wanna have any like pockets of just dry sugar in there, because everything should be mixed with the butter. So basically, this is the most delicious butter in the whole world. This is sugar butter. You can make this if you'd like to churn your own butter. You know, you can put it in a jar and shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Like we do at Armand Bayou. You can add cinnamon and sugar to it. You can add white sugar and brown sugar, whatever you'd like. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a field trip that we take in 3rd grade. All right, fantastic. So I'm gonna just show you this little thing right here that I like to do. So right here where I set my spatula, I set it on the butter wrapper, because the name of the game is keeping stuff as clean as you can so that there's less cleaning to do at the end. Because who wants to have a delicious kitchen full of cookie smell and then you have to do all this cleaning? It's a bummer. Nobody wants to do that. Okay, now, oh, you know what? There is one ingredient that I did not add to my mise en place, and that was 1 large egg. So I'm gonna get that out of the refrigerator. One large egg. Now, especially when you're a beginner, it is a good idea to crack your egg into another bowl other than what you're mixing in. Just like we did with the baking powder or the baking soda, we're gonna do that with this. Because if you break an egg and you get some eggshell in there, it's no big deal, but you need to be able to see to get it out. So we're gonna get out one more little bowl. Now, cracking an egg, you'll see a lot of people take an egg and crack it on the side of a bowl. I don't advise doing that, because what happens is when you crack it, it pushes eggshell up into the egg. So what I like to do is I like to crack an egg on a flat surface, like a countertop. And if you're scared, you can do a lot of light little taps. You certainly don't want to slam it down, because then you're going to end up with a big mess, but you're going to give it a good whack. Okay, see the oval in there? I'm gonna put my fingers, my thumbs in that oval. I'm gonna push them in, I'm gonna wiggle them in, and I'm gonna slowly pull them apart. Okay? Now, I have lots of practice. Lots and lots and lots. See how there's no eggshell in there? It's just because I've done it a lot of times. But I get eggshells and stuff all the time. The best way to get an eggshell out of an egg, get your fingers wet, and then just kind of scoop it out with your finger. That's all you need to do. All right, so now I'm gonna start using my whisk, now that I have this egg that I'm going to put into here. Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit of stirring like this. Get it nice and combined. Sometimes you have to tap off the whisk so that you get all of the ingredients that are stuck in there. Now we can also add our vanilla, and it tells me that I need 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Or I'm sorry, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So just like I did with the baking powder, or baking soda, I keep saying baking powder, I'm gonna use this bowl to measure over in case I spill. Because you don't want to end up with too much vanilla. I know vanilla smells so good, but if you get too much of it, it is no good and it does not taste good. My mom had a friend who, when she was a little girl, thought vanilla was so good that she should drink some. And what she didn't know is that vanilla is made with a lot of alcohol. Now, alcohol is something that your parents can safely drink because they're old enough. But for children, it's a no-go. Make you real sick. So we're stirring together all of our ingredients, all of our wet ingredients. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's gloopy, and gloopy is good. Now it is time to combine our dry ingredients with our wet ingredients. So I'm gonna very slowly just kind of shake it in. I might even do a little stirring in between before I pour all of it in. Now, who has an idea as to why you don't just plop all the flour into the bowl? That is right, it's because it will explode all over, and that will just be more stuff that you have to clean. Once again, cleaning, not fun when you have cookies to eat, right? I'm gonna add the rest of my dry ingredients. I'm gonna stir, whisking them together, making sure I'm scraping around the sides of the bowl, tapping off this whisk because you can see like flour is getting stuck in there. I wanna make sure everything is incorporated. That means everything is mixed together well. Trying to find a way to tap this off so it's not quite so loud and you guys don't have to listen to it at home. Okay, all right. Oh, you guys, this is looking really good. I'm gonna get as much of that out of there as I can. I might even use my knife from leveling, just kind of get into those cracks, spaces between the wires. All right. Now, here comes the fun part. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of M&Ms, but we're gonna start off with a little bit less than that. I'm gonna start off with 1/3 cup because that is actually a lot of M&Ms. And I'm going to take my spatula from before and I'm going to do something called folding them in. That's where you do a mix and then you cover everything up in the middle with what you just mixed. You kind of go around, folding, because we want, and then you can kind of stir it, because we want M&Ms all over the place here. We want this to be a super M&M-y cookie. Okay, so there is that. I think I'm gonna go ahead and add some more M&Ms. So now we're at 2/3 of a cup. And if you don't like M&Ms, don't use M&Ms, use chocolate chips. Okay. So, fantastic. Yum. Yum, yummy, 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 yummy. All right, now it is time to start putting them onto the cookie sheet that I have. It is always a good idea, whenever you're working with a cookie sheet of any kind, first of all, cover it in foil. Next thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna oil it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this butter wrapper that I had that still has some butter on it and just rub it all over this cookie sheet. So now it's gonna be nice and slippery and my cookies won't stick when it comes time to eat them. Right, I am going to get a spoon. Let's see. Okay, I have my spoon. But one of the things that I'm noticing about this dough that is making me a little concerned, and again, even when you've made recipes lots of times, things can happen. This seems a little bit soft. And like I said, remember when I was talking about how you don't want to use melted butter because your cookies will spread out really way too thin? So I think in order to prevent that, what I'm going to do is put this in the refrigerator for a few minutes. Now, you at home, yours might be perfect. Could be absolute cookie dough perfection, and that would be awesome. Mine, however, I'm gonna cool them off a little bit. They're a little bit warm. It's warm in the kitchen because I have the oven on. I also have had that butter sitting out like all day. So it just needs a little bit of time to chill. So I am going to chill this, and I will be back in just a few minutes with cookie dough that is ready to be put on the cookie sheet. One of the things I'm going to do now, while my cookie dough is chilling, I'm going to clean up. It's best to clean as you go. You don't want to be left with a huge pile of dishes at the end of your cooking journey. So while it's chilling, I'm going to clean up the stuff that I've already used, put the ingredients away. My mise en place will go away because I no longer need it. And then I will be back with our chilled cookie dough and our next step. And through movie magic, we're back, even though that actually took a few minutes. So what I have done is I have put away everything. I put away all of my mise en place. I did the dishes. I washed my stuff. We're gonna talk more about that at the end. But let's get back to the fun part. Cookie dough, cookie batter, delicious M&Ms. Cookie sheet. Now, some of you who have taken my cooking course before have heard me talk about how it's important for the things that you're baking to be the same size. And the reason for that is that if you have cookies that are this big, they're gonna cook real fast. If you have a cookie that is this big, it's going to take a lot longer. If you put those two into the oven at the same time, you are going to either end up with a perfectly cooked tiny cookie and a very undercooked huge cookie, or a perfectly cooked huge cookie and a very, very burnt, basically charcoal tiny cookie. So try to make your scoops even. So I'm gonna put this back down so you can see my pan here. Now, are they gonna be perfect? Of course not, that's ridiculous. But I'm gonna get a scoop and I'm gonna start it right here. And remember, cookies are gonna spread out on your cookie sheet, so you gotta leave some space. They need some room to breathe. I'm making my cookies a little bit on the big side because I just feel like it. If you wanted to make little tiny baby cookies, you could do that too. It is your show, my friends. So, I mean, I know they don't look perfect, like perfectly the same size, but I promise you, they're all gonna taste delicious. Now, some people are very, very into the presentation of the food and making them all look just alike. That's something that you would see on a cooking show a lot. I honestly am more concerned with the taste. As long as it tastes good and it doesn't look gross, then I'm fine with it. All right, so that's all I'm gonna put on this tray. You might have a much bigger tray, and so you can add more. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take some of these leftover M&Ms, and I want my cookies very, very M&M-y, M&M-y, lots of M&Ms. So I'm just gonna push them onto the top. You could make a little smiley face if you wanted to, make some kind of design. Remember that when you cook it, the cookie's gonna spread out, so your design might not stick around, but that is okay. You'll know it's there. So this one is already very chocolate chippy, so I'm not gonna put a ton on there. Do a few more for these two. Now, those of you who are looking at this and thinking, man, cookies sound real good, but I'm vegan. What am I supposed to do? Don't worry. We're going to be making vegan chocolate chip cookies at a later date, and they are so good. Okay, so I am all ready to put these into my oven. Now remember, my oven has been preheated to 350 degrees. So I don't have to do any more waiting. I'm gonna slide these right in on the center rack. Usually you have 2 or maybe 3 racks in your oven. You want this to be on the rack that's in the middle. If it's not set up that way, ask your parents, they'll help you to move them up. Right. So now you just have to wait for them to cook. And it's only gonna take about 8 to 11 minutes, depending on how big your cookies are, how many cookies you have, how cold is your dough. There's lots of different things. So I always recommend checking things at that lowest time. So in this recipe, it said 8 to 12 minutes. So I'm gonna go over here to the microwave. I'm gonna set the timer for 8 minutes. And that's when I'm going to check my cookies. And through movie magic, it's gonna seem like no time went by at all. Okay, we're still waiting for the cookies to finish baking, but I wanted to tell you one thing that's important to remember. Whenever you're cooking or baking or anything like that, you're making something, read through the directions all the way through, before you get started, because weird things might come up. Things might need to be added at a weird time, or maybe you're only like with our M&Ms. The recipe told me 1.5 cups, but I only needed to use a little bit at first and then the rest later on. So it's important to know your whole recipe. In this recipe, one of the things that they say toward the bottom, if you've read that far, is that you want these cookies to be cooked on the outside, like nice and golden, but on the inside still look undercooked, still be a very pale color. Because what will happen is, even when we take the cookies out of the oven, they are going to continue to cook a little bit because they're still holding a lot of heat from the oven. And if you cook them until they're all golden brown on top, you're gonna have a very crispy cookie. If you like crispy cookies, go nuts. Make those cookies crispy. I, however, like my cookies to be very chewy and soft. So I'm going to look for cookies that have that kind of darker rim, but a pale center. Now, you don't want a center that is completely uncooked, because that's dangerous, because this recipe has raw egg in it. It's not safe to eat raw egg, it can make you sick, which is why I tell students that it's not a good idea to eat cookie batter, even though it is very, very, very tempting to do. And when we do vegan chocolate chip cookies, you will be able to eat the batter because there will be no egg in it, and it's really delicious. So we're gonna wait just a few more minutes, and then it'll be time to take the cookies out. And we're back. So there's an important lesson to be learned today. Several for me, and one very important lesson for you. And that is that adults make mistakes all the time. Even on things they've done many, many times before. So remember when I said, I think this dough is too warm. I'm gonna put it in the fridge for a little while. I was right. I should have put it in for longer. And remember when I said, I'm going to use gluten-free flour, even though you don't have to? Well, if you're not familiar with what gluten does, have you ever made pizza dough or maybe pretzel dough and you can stretch it and it gets real stretchy? That stretch, that chewiness, comes from a protein called gluten. When you don't have that, you don't have things binding together as well, holding together in one piece. So you guys are gonna laugh so hard at this, and I'm here to tell you it's okay, because what came out of my oven is hysterical. And I want you to always know that everybody makes mistakes and it's okay. And that the next time I come to you with a video, I will have perfect sugar cookies to show you. I actually have gotten emails from people who have already made their sugar cookies, so I know that you guys can do it, even though I ended up with this. Yes, it is just melted cookie studded with M&Ms, which I think is pretty hilarious. But, you know, cooking is an experiment. Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I still have more batter left. I'm gonna give this another try. I'm going to let the dough chill a little while longer and try this whole thing again. See if we can come up with something better. Because again, when you're experimenting, you got to do it a lot. You got to do it over and over and over again so that you can get accurate results. So I'm going to take this M&M mess that I have made and probably throw it in the trash, which is kind of sad, but this is not edible, really. So again, don't feel bad. I will be back, and next time it'll be with perfect cookies. And we're back with our second try. I want to tell you that it was a success. It was not. It was not nearly the train wreck the first batch was. The problem is in the gluten-free flour, I think. Now, since you guys out there used regular all-purpose flour, I am confident that your cookies have come out beautifully. And please, please send me pictures. I really, really want to see them. I'm gonna, be honest here. I'm gonna show you what happened with mine. This is what happens when you experiment in the kitchen. Sometimes it goes horribly wrong, and then you try to fix it, and it's still horribly wrong. But it doesn't matter. Who cares? I can try again another time. This is what I got this time. So one of the things that I did is I changed to a rimmed baking sheet so it wouldn't spread off of the sheet like the last one did, but you can see how they still just spread out. And I had these, I froze these actually so that they would be much, much cooler going into the oven, but it didn't really make any difference. But I am very excited to see how it all worked out for you. And my email address is lindsaymistretti@postoakschool.org. And I'm going to spell my name for you. It's LINDSAYMISTRETTA. I will be sending out an email with our next recipe. Honestly, all I can do is laugh at this because this is, this is just what happens sometimes. And I'll probably sit here and just eat the M&Ms out of it. But do send me pictures of your cookies, whether they came out great or whether they came out like this, because either way, I'm going to love them. This has been so much fun for me. If you guys have any questions, if you have, requests are going to be difficult because I have to know what we're making and I need to make sure the ingredients are available. Some of you may have been to the grocery store lately, and there's a lot of stuff that isn't there. Like flour is very hard to find, which is one of the reasons why I used my gluten-free flour, is because I had it. And sugar can be hard to find. So I'm trying to do recipes where I know that the ingredients are available. But if you have something that you really, really like, please do let me know. If you want to just drop me a line, that would be great. And I will see you next week. Happy eating. Bon appetit. Buen provecho. Bye. Hello, friends, and welcome to part 2 of Sugar Cookie M&Ms. So, after the catastrophic failure last night, I went back and watched the video, and I watched it with my roommates. And, sometimes after like a football game or a basketball game or any kind of sports, you go back and you watch the footage, see what you did right, see what you did wrong. So we're watching it and I'm just like, yeah, these cookies, it's not happening. And my roommate Kat said to me, wait, how much flour did you say you needed? And I was like, I needed a half a cup. And she was like, yeah, but you said you needed a cup. And I was like, oh, you're right, I did. And then I went back. Do you remember I showed you how I had written out the ingredients because I didn't have a printer? When I wrote out how much flour I needed, I only put 1/3 of the amount that I needed. I actually needed a cup and a half. So that is why they fell apart. Also, I think the batter was still too warm. But I went back today and I redid it. I remade the whole thing, and I came out with these. These look like normal, delicious cookies. And I'm going to eat one right now because it's taken a very long time to get this done. So let's see. All right, it's got a nice color on the bottom, kind of darker around the outside than it is in the middle, which is exactly what you want. When I break it apart, it's still soft, it's not crispy. All right, let's see. Oh, it's a success. This is excellent. But I sent you the first video, or I will be sending you the first video, because I really want you to see that failure happens all the time, and you just have to, sometimes take a break and then go back and fix it. Sometimes get a second pair of eyes on it, like I did. Thank goodness for my roommate. So, yeah, this was a learning experience for all of us. And like I said, I will see you next week, and enjoy your food. Happy eating. Bon appetit. Buen provecho. See you later.